If you're planning for your retirement or within 5 years of the intended time you retire, you're probably thinking a lot about the financial side of retirement. Namely, have you got enough to live the life you want with the money you've got? And that's really important. But I'm here to suggest something different. If you're only thinking about the money side of retirement, you're probably poorly prepared for what happens next. And in this video, I want to explain how the insights from a book that I read recently, written by a palliative care nurse, can help you live the retirement you truly deserve. Welcome to What Happens Next. In Bronnie Ware's book, The 5 Regrets of the Dying, she shares the lessons she learned from working with individuals who at the end of their life were looking back on their lives and thinking about what they regret. And I'm a great believer in learning from those experiences and thinking about our lives in a different way so that whatever time we've got left, we can make the most of. My experiences working with clients as a chartered financial planner is that often when we approach retirement, it's a period of reflection. And it gives us a really good opportunity to make changes, make positive changes in our life. And in this video, I want to talk about the 5 regrets Bronnie talks about in her book and what we can learn from them. Number 1 is embracing authenticity. Bronnie shares a story in the book all about a conversation she had with somebody at the end of their lives, where they said to her, I wished I would have lived my life with more authenticity. So the big question is, how do we live our lives more authentically and get closer to understanding what that means to us? And I think living more authentically means understanding what your values are and getting close to that. I play a little game when I'm thinking about my values where I write everything I believe about the world and about life on a little post-it, and then I whittle down to the 2 or 3 that are really important for me. And if you're not sure how you want to spend this next chapter of your lives, going through the analysis of your own personal values, what's important to you, and thinking about how that defines the way you might choose to spend your time is a really important exercise to do when you're approaching retirement or whatever happens next for you. The second regret Bronnie shares in her book, of the people she spoke to at the end of their lives, is the wish for better balance. Because the regret specifically was people regretted working so hard. Now I get it, work for many of us is an important part of our lives. But often when I'm working with clients who are getting to that stage of financial independence, part of the reason that they want to have that conversation is because they appreciate time's precious. And actually, the balance is probably off kilter. Now, what might happen is work might still play a part in many of your lives, even post-retirement. But thinking about the fact that for many people, the quality of their relationships defines the quality of their lives. And time is precious might mean that you put work in a different perspective compared to what it was before. And I think the approach to retirement and thinking about where work fits, if it does in that period of our lives, and how we can maintain a better balance is a really important thing to do. Before we move on to the next reason, I want to talk to you about the reason that What Happens Next exists. We're on a mission here to make sure that we have more nuanced, interesting conversations about retirement and whatever happens next in our lives to help you make sure that you can live the next chapter of your life in the most successful way possible. Now, there's 2 ways that you can genuinely help me do that. Number 1 is like this video if you've got value already. And number 2 is subscribe to this channel. The more people who get to see these videos, hopefully the more people we can help have a nuanced, better prepared, greater understanding of what happens next in their own lives. Thank you. The third lesson Bronnie shares in her book is the regret many people had at the end of their lives. They didn't express their feelings more. And particularly if you're a bloke, and this might be a really broad brushstroke, some of you might be amazed at this, I'm not. Showing emotion is often fairly difficult. And here's the suggestion. Tell people you love them more. I know after reading this book many years ago for the first time, it's something I now do more often. And it's interesting. Whilst this regret doesn't specifically apply to planning for retirement, it might mean that when we think about our social relationships, our social connections, being more vulnerable, expressing emotion, and actually maintaining a better connection because we're focused on those social relationships improves the quality of your life. And that moves me on to the regret that Bronnie talks about in the book, part 4, number 4, that friendships are fundamentally important. It's interesting. We've got a quiz on the What Happens Next website that people take that looks at well-being and where they sit holistically. And interestingly, a lot of people who take the quiz are really strong on their intellectual and occupational well-being, work they feel is going really well for them. They're fairly good on their financial well-being. They've got financial independence or they're nearly there. The elements that are less developed often tends to be community and social well-being. And that's fine. We all maintain different balances throughout our lives. But the reality is we don't want to get to the end of our lives and regret not building really good social relationships. I've talked about on this channel more about the impact of loneliness in our lives, particularly in our later lives. And the reality is loneliness later in our lives has the same effect health-wise as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. So we need to make sure that in this stage of our lives, we build or maintain really good quality social relationships. And actually, the regret that Bronnie talks about in her book is one that we should really consider as we get older. And the 5th regret that Bronnie talks about in her book is that people regretted not being happier, not letting themselves be happier. Now, if you're like me and you believe happiness is a choice, it's a tough choice and one that takes work, but it is a choice. And it's interesting. I have loads of conversations where happiness is seen as a future goal. It's an aspiration to get to. When in actual fact, happiness is achievable today. And I believe that having some simple habits in place to achieve higher well-being and higher happiness is achievable today. For me, and I'm still a work in progress because I'm not always happy, for me, that's gratitude, friendship, maintaining those social relationships we've talked about, fitness, self-care, and many other little habits that I try to adopt in my life. And my recommendation to you when you're thinking about retirement, don't assume that happiness will come when you retire. Think about how you can cultivate and nurture happiness in your life today. So they're the 5 things that Bronnie Ware talks about as regrets of the dying in her amazing book. I'd love to know what you've learned from the people you've lost in your life or older people in your life who have taught you life lessons that you really, really appreciate. Please feel free to put those in the comments because I'd love to learn from those lessons as well. And there's 2 additional videos that I want to share with you today that's really going to help. This one is all about the What Happens Next quiz that I mentioned earlier in the video and how you can take it and what you'll get from it. And this one is all about friendship and the importance of social well-being in our lives. Have a lovely day and we'll see you next time on What Happens Next.